Hello, you're listening to or watching the More Than Roommates podcast. I'm Dan.
And I'm Graham.
And we really wanted to take our time and process everything that happened after the election. We, of course, have a lot of emotions and feelings, but we wanted to make sure that we could articulate ourselves accurately. Mm-hmm. So I think the immediate thing we saw after the election results were a lot of people going online posting like, no matter the politics, we can all be friends.
Yeah.
And I think
some kind of disclaimer. I saw a lot of that. I also saw like, no matter who's president, Jesus is king. Or
which I had not heard that narrative before.
Yeah.
So
those were the two most common things. Yeah, that was just frequently popping up.
Yeah.
Or whatever too. But
and I think it hit us hard. I think my whole perception of I've never had a single event change my outlook of life so drastically as that did. I think it just showed where a lot of people's heads are at, and I think even in our immediate area, it showed how a lot of people view and don't understand why this is concerning to gay people, minorities, women, just like And so we decided to block a lot of people.
Yeah, there's just, after a certain point, you just have to quit entertaining people that have been they tell you who they are, even if they don't say it.
And I think it was a more culmination of, it's not just the election results that made us come to this. It's what we've tolerated.
What we've tolerated, and to be honest, whether it's, a micro or
an outright
or just an outright aggression, like tolerating, homophobic comments or entertaining,
jokes,
misogynistic jokes or racist jokes or whatever. It's just like, like I'm in my 30s, like people, it's just odd to me to see people, especially people that claim to be like Christian, and claim that Jesus is like this figure of love, because that's how I learned it growing up. But then to just outright with the jokes, like to have not matured in any regard, like why it just seems like a lot of people are emotionally stunted, like their humor has not progressed past age 13, and the only things funny to them are things that do have like homophobic or racist undertones to it. And it's just like, now it's like, I don't want to see any of that stuff. Like, I've matured a lot. I've grown a lot into the person that I am. And I've outgrown, people that still want to see the world in that same way.
Yes.
And to sit from, ultimately a privileged position. They don't have to deal with the stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And there are things that just, like, people may say, oh, they're being too sensitive, but is it we're being too sensitive, or are you just like,
or are we not tolerating things?
We're not tolerating at this point.
And so I think the counter argument to the big blocking that's happening is,
I call it the Great Divide.
It
feels like, to me, this is a moral thing more than anything. And
yes, but I think the counter argument is like, oh, well, you can't handle other people's opinions. And I think something that we've discussed is my outlook of social media has really changed, Facebook especially. I've now decided that I don't need every person that I've ever interacted with in all walks of life on like having direct access to thoughts. I don't want to see what you're thinking. Of course, I exist in the real world. I work every day. I have to see all types of people in my day-to-day.
It's not like we're creating like our own echo chamber. It's more or less, let's get rid of the politically charged people that are clearly like at least have some level of like sympathy or empathy for people that stand against us and our human rights. And that's really the core of the issue. I don't want to go like too deep. I don't feel like I have to explain why my right to exist is important and why one religion should dictate, like govern someone else's body or someone else's right to have job security or to love who they love. I think it's absolutely insane to force that onto everybody.
Exactly.
It's
And
a paradox. You mentioned like tolerance, and I see a lot of comments like, oh yeah, the tolerant left or whatever. It's truly a paradox, and this has been written about. And the paradox is, if you're tolerant with people who are intolerant, against your, people that are not tolerant of gay people, or brown people or whatever, then the theory is that could eventually erode or undermine tolerance itself if that were to become the majority. And so that's why I'm eliminating people. I just don't need to see that. I don't want to log on to Facebook and have a negative feed. I'm trying to personally, like, I want to spread awareness, but I'm trying to disconnect myself, from it too. But also I want to know who I'm surrounding myself with. And that's what it comes down to. Who are you really letting into your life? Like, how do they really feel about you? And a lot of that came into question.
yeah.
I mean,
And I think the other thing too is, because we unfriend you or block you on social media does not mean if we see you in real life that we can't have a conversation.
Yeah.
Social
Or
media
we
is
hope-
very different than real life. And I think
Yeah.
I don't need to have 1,000 people of my friends seeing the ins and
someone we
outs of.
drank with at a bar one time 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, so I think some people might be taking that personally.
Yeah.
And to an extent, you should take it personally because
Yeah,
but
you've
it's
you've
not the end of the
indicated
world.
who you are. Going even back to our original comment about people posting, oh, don't let politics get in the way of your friendship or whatever. You kind of, like, if these people are against your right to exist to some capacity
or happiness.
like, yeah, it's time to, like, let those types of people go. I don't think it should be this charge where it's one person versus the other. Like, I feel like there is a lot of middle ground that can be had.
Yes.
But it's the really toxic people, I just don't want to associate with it. I don't want to see it. Like, and you mentioned earlier, how different social media is. I've been on Facebook since you had to actually receive, like, an invite. Like, I had to have an email from, like, someone from my school. Like, each school or something got, like, one person started and they could invite other people to it.
Yeah.
And back then when I was, 14, 15 years old, like, it was like kind of like a popularity contest more than anything. Like,
Right.
collecting everyone you've ever interacted with. You kind of mentioned that
Yeah,
too. And it's just you can't. I'm sorry, but you cannot connect with 1,000 people. Like, the algorithm won't push everything to you. It's so.
And I cleared out my friends list, and it's people
Yeah.
I have no ill will towards.
Right,
But it's
yeah.
people that maybe I went to high school with. I will never see you again. You post random stuff that I just don't care. So I'm just
Yeah.
decluttering and wanting this to be a place of inspiration and uplift.
And
It's
mental peace.
Yeah, it's something I'm doing in my own time. Like, I don't think people realize social media is supposed to be fun for you. It's not something you should just, because you've ran into this person at the grocery store, that you need to hear their beliefs. I also want to get in how I view the different social media, but give me 1 second. One thing that I wanted to touch on is, I think we kind of came to this discussion last night, but I think Facebook is becoming outdated. I think the premise of you posting your thoughts and then friends of friends of friends can comment on it and add in their 2 cents, and it's this giant, like, people that you don't even know are viewing your comments and stuff, and it's just like, we say as we post this to YouTube, but this is curated stuff, not discussions I'm having with family members. But that's why I prefer Instagram stories, where if you're going to share your thoughts, if someone has an issue, they can directly message you. And that is more the norm, to just message rather than have this battleground of comments where it's like, okay, like someone, Aunt Jim, Uncle Jim, like chiming in, where it's like, okay, this is.
I see your point too. On, like, the flip side of that, I also feel like you were exposed to a lot of negativity from those types of people, and it's hard to not advocate for yourself, because if you don't advocate for yourself, who will?
Exactly.
Ultimately. But I see what you mean. Arguing with people is going to do nothing but further push them deeper into their own echo chamber and their own beliefs. I feel like there's just a lot of people that are, associated with the other party that truly are not good people. Just at the end of the day, they want to see, there's a lot of hatred, a lot of vitriol out there.
And this is, I think, the next segment that we wanted to go into is stuff that we've tolerated in our lives.
Yeah.
And I think we've also realized that by tolerating it, we've allowed this thought mindset to foster and grow. And I think we needed to really check ourselves. And I think it's hard because neither of us are very confrontational. We just want to exist. We want to just have our
a good
life.
time. Yeah.
And it's not something we don't want to be that person that, if we're out at a party, they're like what is the word? Just like, oh my gosh, okay, you can't make any jokes, but I think that is something that we've had to stop. And I think we wanted to kind of share just how day in and day out this is for us, and how we don't bring up every microaggression and stuff, because it is exhausting.
It is.
But I think this shows, and that's, if we went with this title of you'll never know what it's like, because we've had to take it on the chin time and time again just to be,
and then get called a snowflake, or whatever.
And so I think we need to explain things that we've experienced. And I think you saw at the beginning the montage of things that we've overlooked. We've had comments that are just horrible of let's mow people down that think this way.
It's truly evil. And
that was reported and sent to the appropriate places. Like, don't think we're letting things slide. But it's like, I also don't want to come out in here and...
I want to unpack that also a little bit, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So the comment, what was the effect of...
let's mount a weapon on a truck and mow people down at a pride parade.
Because they said, we're, chomos. I don't know how to... Yeah. The comment said that, we protect.
I get what that means. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
you looked at me like I was crazy.
I didn't understand what that acronym.
Sorry.
Because it was talking about the drag queens at reading at kids to
being
libraries.
a pedophile. Okay, I just feel like that needs clarification. No one LGBT is going to protect a pedophile. They're not part of our alphabet gang. A pedophile is a pedophile. It knows no.
And these are the narratives that are making an outlier. That's
I
it's
know.
So. And I know that comment was an extreme one, but this is what we're saying. And so I think
we have to deal with being accused of that. I guess our the people we associate with or whatever. Maybe not direct people we know, but still there's this broad view that's who we are as people, and that's just not true.
Yeah,
it's not true.
And one thing that I, as we becoming more empowered and wanting to advocate for ourselves, and being comfortable in our skin. At a previous job I worked for a school district, and during Pride Month, the first year, I brought up, because part of my job was to advocate for all groups of people every month, every holiday, to acknowledge people. That was my job. Black History Month, Women's History Month, Veterans Day, Native American Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month. So then Pride Month came around.
Yeah. What's the difference?
Yes. And so first year I brought it up, and I was like, what is our plan? Oh, well, that's very political. I don't know. And you know what? I was new in this job.
So it's political for our right to exist.
Yeah. So first job, I was too passive. I let it go by. Second year comes around. It's Pride Month again. Every year, more and more groups and schools and public entities are advocating it, as they should. It's not controversial that gay people exist and that we should celebrate it. Yeah, so I came up with a campaign that would not directly say it. It was a picture of our logo with the rainbow behind it, and it said, "Our district welcomes," or "Our district loves everyone." Didn't directly say it. I thought it was the perfect amount of, you get what's there. I think that's we love everyone. Why is that controversial?
Right.
And
especially to children, you know, like that, like
need that
kids
support.
Like I remember how I was as a kid. Like it is scary when you see the world through a lens that hates you, and you're coming to terms with yourself. Like you want to make things welcome for everyone, and I don't know why that's controversial either.
So I made the campaign, I pitched it, I took mock photos. I was passionate about this.
Yeah.
And it was, I had support within the staff, but it was left up to the school board, and it was discussed in private, and I was not allowed to be in the room, but I made buttons with this picture, and I made it made it for everyone. They had the meeting. Some of them came out wearing the buttons, but it was ultimately decided that it was still too political. I didn't let that get me down. I still made the buttons at my desk. I would sit and make buttons whenever I had downtime, and I started handing them out. I would wear the button. I had teachers being like, "Oh my God, I love that. Where can I get one?" And so I would hand them out. I had someone that worked in my office, and she came up from downstairs and she was sobbing, and she was like, "I've never experienced something like this. I've always wanted to see something represented, and it's just never happened." And she wanted to thank me, and that was all it took.
It's powerful to see that, you know,
and to
just know that you have support behind you in a world where you don't feel welcome, you know.
Yep.
The fact that they said that was political would have made me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, I'm advocating for everyone else, but I can't even advocate for myself.
Right.
And I'm mad at myself because I didn't push harder, because I don't want to stir the pot. I don't want to be don't want to be caught viewed as that, but I should have, and I'm going to keep advocating. And now that I'm not working there, it's not ever going to get brought up again for who knows how long. So that's difficult, but that's just one example.
Yeah.
You've had some examples.
Yeah, they're even this is more on the microaggression level, but it's tough to be friends with people and go to a party packed with a bunch of people you really don't know, and you're just there to hang out and have a good time, and then suddenly one of the kids at the party who's I don't know, 10, 12 years old is like, "Wow, that's gay." Is that really how we're still gonna talk and mold the mind?
No one corrected the kid.
No one corrected. It was just awkward to be sitting next to you, well, this is happening right in front of us. Oh, so is that how they really feel? Why are we still, that's humor from 20 years ago, why are we still spreading that to our children's minds to use language like that? It just drives division, and it makes people less sympathetic for others. Ultimately, I feel
when we were growing up, that was the slur. That's gay. That's gay.
It was a
Everyone
slur.
Would say that, and we've come so far. And then to be invited into someone's home and their kid is using that language, and it's are you kidding me? And we let this stuff slide, and we shouldn't have,
because it's not also not our place to correct someone's kid, not especially it's not in our home.
Yeah, and it has been brought into our home, and,
right, and not by a child.
It's just I think again, it's you tolerate this stuff, and people think it's okay, they think it's cute, and it's not. We're advocating on this podcast. People comment horrendous things. It's also in I showed you at my last job, and then when I worked in news, I was not out. I was not public. I still had my own boss tell me my voice is too high. I talked about that at length. Even when I was at the scene of a shooting and going Facebook Live, advocating for stuff, spreading just doing my job, and people are commenting, well, he's only out there to look at the cops' butts. It's you guys,
maybe I'm a professional and I'm just out there doing my job. It's having an internal bias towards someone for whatever reason, and it's just I don't want to F with people like that. I don't need them in my life. I don't need them knowing what I'm up to. Yeah. And I know that's a stranger, but I'm just kind of circling back to who's in our, lives, They obviously don't understand what we're going through after years and years of knowing
And I
you know.
think people don't even realize by
But
us getting on this platform and advocating is putting a target on our back, as you've seen in the comments. But because we feel
right,
strongly, it's not like we want to do this for fun.
right.
We enjoy it. I want to advocate, but I think it's important. And I think to round this out, we can go into some direct conversations we've had with people like, why are you concerned? Like, this is for the economy, blah, blah, blah. But some of the policies that are being put out there are so scary. And I think, one of them is that one of the things that are being discussed is that if teachers find out that the kid is gay, that they have to report it to the teacher or to the parents. That would have ended me. If I was outed in high school and before.
And that's why suicide rates are so high among LGBT youth,
yes.
in particular, like the trans people and children too,
Yes.
There are very high rates of mortality.
Yes. And if
self-inflicted.
Yes. And it's horrible to think about. And if all the kids out there, like, high school is not the end all be all. There is more to it, but it can feel all consuming. And if I was outed before I was ready, it would have been dire. I mean, even in health class, modern day, I'm not that old. I had an older health teacher, and we were talking about families, and it was brought up about gay couples and having kids, and she said, "Ew, that just shouldn't happen. That's gross." In modern day, in front of me. Like, these are all things that I had to store and just go about my day and pretend. And so I think people just don't understand the day in and day out of what this is like. And if we wanted to call out every little thing, we would be out of breath.
Exactly.
It's exhausting to say that you should care about us.
And I think that to kind of further go through that, to like amplify on that, I find it funny how like people like to just throw out like, oh, it's year whatever 2024. People just I don't believe that people think like that anymore. It's just so ignorant, because they clearly do.
And that's why we have to bring this up, because obviously you can turn a blind eye, and I think it's difficult, but I don't know. That was, I think, just all our thoughts on this.
It's tough. You got to protect your own peace. You got to associate with people that love you for who you are as a person and aren't going to have like some undertone of judgment, whether it's outright judgment or not. It's just, you don't need toxicity in your life. Like, we're on this rock for a short time.
Yeah.
Why not, surround yourself with the best, and that's
how
I feel about it.
And I feel invigorated to keep pushing. We're gonna keep advocating. This channel is just gonna get more and more, and so hopefully we're growing with the people that want to see us. And if hopefully this opens your eyes, send it to people that,
or if you're on the other side of the issue, I hope like
us advocating.
This is just us advocating for our rights as a human. And to speak out against, I don't need to live under some like draconian laws, of a religion that I don't have to believe in or participate in. I firmly believe everyone should have that right to practice their own religion. I'm not saying like
as long
it
as
can't
it doesn't
exist,
hurt people,
as long as you're not using it to hurt people,
or putting laws in effect because of your religion and your beliefs.
That's what it is, and that's what's happening right now. And people want to ignore that fact completely. Like people want to pretend like Roe versus Wade wasn't overturned a couple of years ago, and now like women are dying in states where it's suddenly no longer legal to have, like, not everyone gets an abortion. And I know abortion is a hot topic, and I'm not trying to like just drag this out, but there are cases where, women die from sepsis because they miscarry, and then it's considered an abortion, I don't know. That seems to be the direction that it's going. There's, separation of church and state for a reason. And I just think it's so interesting that people want to bring religion into law, like, I don't know.
There's obviously a lot more discussions to be had. I want to bring in more voices. If you have input or know experts, people you want to see us talk with, I can always reach out.
Yeah. Can I just round out one
Yeah.
more thing too? So the reason I feel like I'm scared too, you've brought up kind of your points with, like teachers having to out the kid or whatever. I've read that they want to remove, like the actual word like homosexual or transgender from all federal documents is something part of this agenda that this, next administration wants to carry out. And that means a lot to people like us, that is where, title rights come into effect, where, right now, yes, we're protected. We can't be fired just for being gay.
But if that
goes away, then we lose that right. And, we've only had the right to get married for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a long time.
No.
Like, I was 24, 25 when that passed.
Yeah.
Like,
and that goes into the argument of, I don't see color. I don't care what color you are, brown, purple, green.
Or your sexual preference. They like to say preference.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something
you're
deeply embedded that you're born with.
But you need to see color. You need to see the differences in people, because you need to acknowledge that there are people that see that and hate it.
That deal with the struggles we do too.
Yeah. So if you just say like, well, we're all the same, it's not true. That's not how it is, and that's not how the world operates. And you need to accept that, and you need to acknowledge it and be there for the people that have years of oppression in their history. And that is the thing of, I don't see color. You should. It's there. There are history. There are actual factors that go into this. So
if you don't like Pride Month, then don't celebrate it. Don't go to a Pride parade. Like, it's really that simple. Like, when I think freedom for everyone to have their own bodily autonomy and to be able to love whoever they want to love and practice whatever religion they want to practice.
But I think that's also been the route we've gone with, is if you don't like it, don't participate. But you also need to acknowledge that there are dangers. But there are dangers with Pride Month. And every year it comes around, I get nervous because you never know who's going to put those comments that are on Facebook into action. So whether it might not be your cup of tea, you need to strongly stand up against the hatred and not allow it, or not let friends in your groups be like, well, it's so crazy that
you got to stand up for your friends. If you were truly friends with them, you got to stand up for them and be an ally. At this point in the game. Like a few years ago, we took the high road, but now it's like our rights to exist, are potentially going to be left up to state courts, and we're in a red state, like,
it's not right.
Sure, we've had, good wins, like abortion, that got overturned here to where women have the right. But if I see my rights on a ballot, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, to know just like how politicized like my life has been made out to be.
Yes. And that was something too, is like, the argument is, well, that was just narrative. It might not happen. So should I wait until my rights are taken away and then I get to be upset with the people that put this in
from my life?
Or can I advocate now and say, like, this is crazy that it's even being discussed, because it is being discussed. You cannot say it's not.
But people do. They try to gaslight you into thinking it's not, because they're not aware of it. I think some of it is truly ignorance. Don't get me wrong. And then I think there are truly hateful people too that want to see that happen.
Or are indifferent enough to let it happen.
It's wild times, man.
But keep your head up. Surround yourself with people that love you, and do whatever you can to keep your own peace. And that's what we're doing.
Try to kill people with kindness. You bring the facts into the argument. Don't go off on them like crazy, because it's not going to do anything but fuel the flame. Just be real about it.
Okay. Well, see you next
thanks
time.
Thanks for listening.